Welcome to the Sip and Scale podcast, where we talk about everything business, entrepreneurship, and startups. My name is Blendi Muriqi. I'm the CEO and founder of Delegate.co. Each week, you'll join us as we talk with industry experts and business owners, sharing actionable insights to drive your business forward. So grab your favorite beverage and let's sip our way to success. Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. I'm your host, Blendi Muriqi. Today's episode, we have a good friend of mine, Caroline Ramos. She is the founder and CEO of Host and Keep. Inspired by her own real estate investments, she converted to the short-term rental space back in 2019. Initially managing properties for friends and family, Caroline quickly recognized the growth potential and expanded her portfolio while working full-time as director of sales at an events company. Her expertise in interior design, concierge services, and guest experience has been pivotal to her brand's success. With a 13-year background in marketing and hospitality, Caroline has held positions at Unilever, Matomi Media Group, and Party Rental, where she led marketing strategies for high-profile events like the Met Gala and the US Open. She holds real estate licenses in Florida and New Jersey and was exposed to value-add real estate models through her family's construction business. Her entrepreneurial mindset and blend of business development and creativity have enabled her to scale Host and Keep with plans for international expansion. She's currently building a custom home in Miami's Upper East Side. We're really excited about that. Inspired by modern Yucatecan elements and minimalism, incorporating a vacation rental component to blend income potential with aesthetic appeal. Welcome to the show, Caroline.
Thanks for having me, Blendi.
Yeah. Okay, so I met you, let's see, going on 2 years, 3 years? I met you at a conference. I believe it was either a guesty conference or VRMA.
I think it was VRMA, and we probably met at the bar. I remember you left an impression on me, and we hit it off right away.
Now I remember, I think it was like a Wheelhouse sponsored little cocktail reception, and then we ended up seeing each other throughout the last few years at other events and staying in touch. So it's really good to have you on the podcast. The reason I wanted to have you on this podcast is, one, you're in the short-term rental space and you have an interesting background, given that you have the creative background, which you've helped transition into real estate and short-term rental space. So I guess talk me a little bit through how you started, your background, how you ended up in the vacation rental space, and then we'll kind of keep the conversation going from there naturally.
Perfect. The short-term rental space kind of happened by accident, starting the management company. It wasn't initially what I intended to do. I probably got into it the same way most vacation rental managers got into it, owning your own vacation rental first, seeing how well it does, and then growing to have more, and then eventually offering the service of management. I sold my place in New York. I took those funds, moved to Miami, and bought my first apartment. It was a little rinky-dinky studio on the beach here in an Art Deco building in Miami Beach. And I remember I said, okay, let me list it for rent. And I could rent it for probably $1,200 if I did a yearly rental. It was very small, out of which I'd probably keep around $400 a month. It wasn't that exciting. Then I said, what if I short-term rented it? Now all of a sudden I was able to rent the studio for $3,000 a month, and I was keeping like $2,200 a month. And that was exciting. So I said, okay, let me take that and do it again. So I bought a unit upstairs in the same building. I did the same thing, same layout, just different wallpaper, slightly different aesthetic. And I was like, oh, this is cool. And then I bought a 1-bedroom apartment in Midtown. And then my friends and family started noticing. And I was obviously, sharing these insights. And they were like, oh, well, I want to get an apartment in Miami. Can you manage it for me? And that's kind of how the company started. It was very unofficial and friends and family at first. I mean, my background, I come from immigrant parents, right, that came here from Argentina. English was their second language. And I remember they started the business. And my dad, he said something to me that always stuck with me, which was, you're never going to become a millionaire by working for somebody else. And I think that always stuck with me. So when, I had these investment properties making money, but I was like, well, how can I actually turn this into a business? And finally, try to not work for somebody else. Because I did the whole typical thing of, going to college, you get your master's degree in something, and then you work for years, and that's something that you studied, thinking, that's the right thing to do. And then eventually you hit that ceiling and you're like, okay, where do I go from there? How can I keep growing? How can I not have just one stream of of income and rely on just one stream of income. How can I diversify that? So for me at first, it was having these investment properties, and then from there, turning it into a business.
So a lot of people, they make this transition where they've worked in corporate America for a few years, and there's this itch that they get to be an entrepreneur. What was that transition like for you, given that there's a whole swath of population, they want to be an entrepreneur, they want to like have more independence in their life, more, we talk about the buzzword financial freedom, but there's never like, for many of them, there's never this thing that pushes them. What was that catalyst for you? Was it just seeing your parents have a business? Was it some sort of circumstance that brought you to that? What made you get into that transition?
Yeah, taking the leap. Well, it was very hard to take the leap. I always wanted to take that leap. I hated having to submit PTO and having to play the corporate politics and reporting to someone that you said, I know more than them, or I could do better. Why am I working for this person? And I remember I always jumped to a competitor. I would always work at a corporate job for about a year and a half. I'd jump to a competitor. I'd get a big raise. I'd get a senior or a director in front of my title. And it made it really hard to take that leap because I was comfortable. I wasn't suffering in any way. I knew how to kind of play my cards. And there's this saying says that if you want to take the island, you have to burn your boats. And I didn't want to do that. I was like, wait, I just want to swim. So then COVID happened and it burned my boats. I was working in special events. I was in Miami at the time and I was working on like Art Basel and the Miami Boat Show and the Sobe Food and Wine Festival. And obviously all that went away when COVID hit. So it was game over for the events world.
Wow.
Now, you have someone that for 14 years worked in corporate America in New York City, and my identity was tied to my job. So I was like, who am I? I was lost. I didn't know what to do. And I didn't realize it's such a blessing at the time. So my boats were burnt and I had to figure out what to do. So I had to swim. And I think that through that period, there was a lot of growth that happened. And I lost my identity. I was going through all this kind of self-discovery. I got into Tony Robbins. I went to his conference. Well, I did virtual conferences and then I went to some in person when it opened up again. I did Joe Dispenza. I don't know if you've ever heard of him. I was reading his books. I went to some of his retreats. I was doing these transcendental meditations, trying to figure out what do I do from here? I didn't want to go back and get another job. And then it just came to me. I don't know. It was just, okay, I'm doing really well with these vacation rentals. Let me start offering this. Let me get my real estate license here too. And let me help people with the transaction. And I have 3 passions that I'm aware of that I would love to pursue in some way and not just work in marketing. And one was design. I love design. I love real estate. I've seen my parents and my family build what they have now through real estate. And then I love travel and vacations. Yeah. So how do I marry those 3 in a very organic way? And it just made sense.
That's so interesting. So we share a similar story in that the leap that I made to starting Delegate happened out of COVID, where I work as the chief operating officer of this large property management company. And during COVID, I realized that, wow, no matter what I do, even though I'm in the highest position possible, I'm still an employee at this company. And it got to a point where I was thinking to myself, no matter what I do, I'm always going to be capped in what I can accomplish and what I can pursue. I remember talking to my former boss at the time, and I remember him saying to me, he's like, no matter how much more money I give you, if you have that itch, you're going to want to pursue it. And COVID was that catalyst where I was like, I have a skill set that I know can be applied in different domains. And so I was managing at the time large teams of overseas talent. I realized, wow, this is a very natural progression of things. I can just do what I'm doing now, but do it for myself and build a business out of it. So yeah.
And that's amazing. And there's certain skill sets that not everybody has, and you can't really learn in school, I think. And just being naturally good at sales, which you are, is just one of those foundational marketing, sales, growth, networking. You're so good at that, and you have very good people skills. So you're able to build teams, you're able to lead teams, you're able to find clients. I think that those are those skills that you can't always outsource so well. It's great to kind of have control over that when you're starting.
So what advice would you give to, there's probably people out there that they're in the same boat we were in. and they're trying to find that thing that will give them financial independence. What advice would you give to those people that really they're comfortable, but they may not want to take the leap of faith right now because they're scared of the outcome? They know they have certain skill sets, but they're comfortable.
My advice would be keep your job for now. Start the side hustle at the same time. Start lining up kind of those foundational things like your website, maybe it's your invoicing system, your business cards, maybe you want to start off with, getting someone that can help you, whether it be a VA or whether it be maybe you need to find the right partner or what have you. Start lining those dominoes up. Try to close your first client, maybe your second client. Make sure you have some reserves, 3 months or so, or 3 to 6 months of reserves that you can say, okay, I can survive here, because it's hard at first when you're launching a business. You're scared to do things. Everything's new. But I will say that there's light at the end of the tunnel. Once you start your first business, it's just so much easier and natural to start your next one. And I know, Blendi, you've had a few businesses, which is awesome. And you can probably attest to this. You now know the drill. You know those few things you have to do to get it up and running, and you can do it much smoother.
Yeah, it's interesting. Once you're in it, then you realize, like, if God forbid, maybe another COVID happens tomorrow, you now have those skill sets where you can just pick yourself right back up and start from scratch. And I think having that mindset, it gives you the ability to take a lot more risk, because you realize at the end of the day, like, no matter what happens, you can take all my money away. You can take all my resources away, but you can't take the skills that I've acquired through the hard work over the last few years.
Exactly. And these are tremendous. I mean, so I started Host and Keep, and that was kind of my first shot at this. I don't know if you know this. I opened up a cleaning company.
Yeah.
Believe it or not. I don't even know how to clean my own house. But yeah, I have a cleaning company now, vertical integration. And that I opened that in like 3 days.
Yeah.
Put it all together. We got the insurance, whatever licensing we need, ordered uniforms, started, I partnered with somebody that handles the field ops, because I don't know how to do that, but I know how to work behind a desk and handle all of those pieces. But it happened so fast. I was like, oh my gosh. I forgot to even tell my family, like, yeah, guys, I opened up a cleaning company 3 months ago. They were like, what? Because it just becomes, you get it down. So whoever's listening, I mean, that can be some motivation that it'll come easier on your next business and your next business. And there's no reason to just have one business. You can have multiple streams of income through businesses or investments. And then my next piece of advice is, once you do start that business, I think it's really important on day one to know your exit. Why are you doing this, and what's your plan? Are you planning to sell? For me, short-term rental. Are you planning to sell? Am I planning to just have this be just side income and family business? And you're going to set up differently based on what your exit is, and also to have clarity on where you want your business to go. So it sounds corny, but this may be my corporate side speaking, but having mission, vision, and values defined, we have it on our website, and our entire team, it's part of their onboarding training to know it. Because having that aligned when you first start, rather than focusing on, the sales and the clients, which is what we're all naturally inclined to do as entrepreneurs, what kind of business you're setting up. That's going to help you better pick the people you hire, and then better pick your clients too. So you're not just taking on any client that may not fit that mold. I made this mistake with Host and Keep. When I started, I was taking on anyone. There would be units that look like IKEA on the beach with leaks. I'd inherit them to manage already with active leaks and things that I would walk away immediately. We turn down at least 20% of the clients that come to us now, because it just doesn't make sense. It doesn't fit our portfolio.
I've seen that in a lot of cases where you look at a VR company and they just have, like, they're all over the place. They have $7 million mansion, but then they have like these crappy studios that look like they're from the 1970s. And I've seen that mistake being made. And what consequently happens is the negative feedback on those lower performing properties end up being the image of your company.
Yeah. So you need to know, are you managing luxury properties? I met this one company at the conference. They do like workforce style housing or like military type. I'm sure you know that. It was very interesting how they're like, no, we only do those, $80 a night properties. And that's all they do. Yeah. And they're focused on that, and they're very good at that. And they're the properties that other companies turn away. So yeah, it's important to define that. Like, what are you about? What do you stand for? And then who you want to hire that's going to fit within that, and that's going to resonate with them. And then the clients that you want to target. So then now everything you build up from there is very focused, very clear, and your exit. So by knowing your exit, for example, we always knew that we wanted to eventually sell. So I said, okay, so what's important to my buyer? My buyer is going to want strong contracts, because when you sell, you're either selling your whole company or you're just selling your contracts in vacation rentals. So I said, okay, we need really strong contracts. I think I spent like $8,000 building contracts with my lawyer to make sure we have a really solid management contract. We have a really solid guest agreement as well. So we won't ever have a squatter situation. We have very good NDAs, very good contractor agreements, and everything is buttoned up. It's a foundational expense. Rather than spending that money on sales and marketing at the beginning, we actually started with, okay, let's set the foundation and the structure up. This is probably also my corporate hat serving me, at least now as an entrepreneur. I trademarked the name and the tagline. I thought that was very important. I spent money on brand guidelines. So how do you use our logo? What's our color palette? What are the patterns we use? How can I see it in different applications? So anything we use graphically, whether it be print or digital, all matches the same story. But yeah, things like that I think are important. And that all starts with, obviously, after you take the leap. But once you do that, figuring out kind of what your exit is. As crazy as that sounds, it's like, okay, now that I've taken the leap, how do I get out of it? No, but you want to start mapping that out and have some kind of business plan.
I think that's one of the benefits of having a corporate background is you've had that experience in the past. So you know that going into a new business, these are the foundational stuff that you need to put in place, which I don't hear very often from entrepreneurs because their head is, I want to have my own business. I want the financial freedom. And then inevitably what happens is they become employees of their own business. They become victim to the constraint a business has on you. And I think that if you go into creating the business with the mindset of at some point I want to have an exit. Now you can have guidelines set for what needs to be done on a daily, weekly, monthly basis for you to head down the road.
Right. I mean, the last thing you want to do is leave your cushy corporate job, start your own business. Now you're working 12 hours a day. You're making less money than you were making before. But that's usually what happens. I hate to break it to whoever's listening. That's usually what happens for a small period of time. And then you have this J curve happen. And that's a beautiful thing. But when that J curve happens, you have to be careful that more money, more business also means less free time, less quality of life. You don't want those to be inversely related. So it's about finding a way of, okay, how does more money and more business also equal more freedom, which is the whole why and why we started this business.
Here's like a side question. How has proper accounting and bookkeeping been integral to your business? How have you managed to really hire? Because if you want to exit your business someday, you need properly organized books.
Reporting, proper books, proper P&Ls, that was so important. And I forgot that piece about, when you're looking to potentially sell in the future. Well, luckily, Blendi, I married an accountant. However, my husband, who's my partner in the business, is usually slammed. He's usually revenue managing. He's helping with ops. He actually has a day job still in private equity. So doing the accounting always kind of fell to the wayside. So we hired some VAs. It was a disaster. It'd be trial and error. Oh my gosh, we've had situations where we just tried to do it ourselves by sourcing our own VAs and it just did not work. We had one, for example, that we would record their screens. And I remember we would give them assignments for bookkeeping and we'd see them WhatsApp those assignments to someone else. And this other person that they were subcontracting it was just a disaster. So you want to hire the right people for that. And the smallest things can turn into big things with improper bookkeeping and accounting.
Yeah. How did you end up fixing that? Because, on my end, when I first started, let me preface this by saying that there's immense benefits to hiring overseas talent, but it has to be done correctly. And for me, when I first started as a PM, I had a friend of mine that told me, hey, you should consider hiring overseas. It's cost effective. It'll take a lot of the work off your plate. And I went online and just hired like the first person that I interviewed. And that was an epic mistake, but it taught me that the same principles that you use for hiring in corporate America, you need to apply to hiring anyone overseas. So I'd be interested in hearing how you've evolved your hiring process, not just on the ground, like people on the ground, maintenance, housekeepers, but also your back office, the people that are supporting your operation in the background.
So I have this test and it's very, very simple. First of all, they need to fit in culturally because we have to have the right personalities. This is a business where there are a lot of touch points, to get a property live. Oh my gosh, we have the photographer, we have our field operations team at the property, we have our handyman there, we have to sync it to Wheelhouse and revenue manage, we have to write the copy for the listing, there's so much and there's so many people doing all that. We have to clean the property. You might like this and it may go hand in hand with sip and scale. But if the answer is yes, yes, then we start there.
Yeah.
I need to make sure that personality works and it's someone I can vibe with and somebody I can talk to and someone that when it's a crazy day, you can get each other. So as crazy as that sound, I want to make sure that it's someone that fits culturally first. And then from there, I'll send some tests, I'll do the interview, I'll get a second opinion from the hiring manager on the team. Yeah. I usually always do the first interview though. So it's probably reverse than at least in corporate. I do the first interview and then from there, I pick the top candidates and I have the hiring manager, Vincent, join and interview them as well. But I think in terms of finding talent, we've gone through all kinds of people. I mean, there's high turnover, especially in certain kinds of roles. Like our guest service supervisors are the highest turnover role. We always hire overseas for that role. We've tried having teams in Nigeria, in Pakistan, in India, in Colombia, in Argentina, the Philippines. And we find that you need to learn culturally how they work. You need to find out culturally, what's the best way that you can be effective working together. For example, in the Philippines, there's 13-month pay where after 1 year of working, they get a whole month bonus. And that's in addition to a holiday bonus. So that's something that, we implement for our Filipino staff to make sure that we're also adapting to them as much. I mean, they adapt to us. They're working night shift, day shift.
Yeah.
So I feel like it's the least we could do is adapt to at least what the customary way of compensating people is over there.
Yeah, I've realized that, you get a lot of benefits out of hiring overseas talent because it's cost efficient. I'm just imagine hiring someone for a day shift in guest services in the city of Miami. It would be 75% more. But what we've had to do is really analyze the top companies overseas. What are they providing in terms of benefits to their employees? And how can we match that and exceed that? And so bring up 13th month pay at Delegate, we started initiating healthcare benefits because we realized that the top customer service companies in the Philippines, these people are getting benefits for not only them, but also for a dependent. And at the bare minimum, you have to provide these benefits or else you can get talent without these benefits, but it's going to be bottom of the barrel talent. The other thing is if you're going through hundreds of applications, you need to realize that the best talent, if you want them to stay at your company for a long, long time, there has to be growth potential for them. So if their goal is to stay in guest services and they're happy doing that, that's great. But for most people, they want to for something, whether it's an accolade or a promotion. And I've tried to structure my business where there's opportunities for overseas VAs to rise through the ranks and become managers or become recruiters themselves. And that keeps them in the company for a longer time period. There are folks that they gain valuable experience working for you and then they realize there might not be the growth opportunities and so they leave. We're very happy that happens because we know this company was a stepping stone for them.
That's great. I mean, so you have this kind of roadmap where their position could go when they start and you keep them motivated that way. That's great. We used to do something like that. It would be based on reviews of a listing.
Yeah.
If every quarter, for example, if every quarter we kept Superhost, everybody would get kind of a bonus and it was shared by the company because again, there are all these touch points. There's no one person responsible for that. We took that away, but it could be something we bring back. But yeah, no, that gets me thinking because I do want to make sure that people are feeling motivated and that there is growth potential for the overseas team. I will say for example, company culture. I know when I interviewed these teammates we have now, which are awesome, all of them were very big, and it may be a Filipino cultural thing, on company culture and how they're treated and things like that. So I was like, oh, you're at the right company. Every quarter, we get together for the team here in Miami. We get together and we do some kind of team outing every single quarter. So I've rented yachts where we go out on a yacht and we cater, or we've gone bowling. We've done beach cleanups and then we go out for dinner and drinks. This next one, we're actually volunteering at a shelter and then we're all going out for dinner and drinks. And every time we do something here in Miami, the Filipino team also goes out. They're not left out in any way. We make sure they're able to go out to dinner. They send us photos. So that's cool. And we're actually planning to go to the Philippines, I think in January or February, to just go be there for a week, fly out their manager and get everyone together and take them out. And, a lot of companies don't stop to do things like that. They don't take that time. And I think that's why it becomes very, very hard to retain talent when you find it. And it's not just about money always. It's also culture and bridging those barriers between ways of operating and customs.
Well, from my experience, it becomes somewhat lonely, because let's say you're working overseas and these are remote positions. So there is no office. There is no like seeing your colleagues in person every day. And that can take a toll on someone. And at the very least, what we do on a yearly basis is we have a retreat where we bring everybody together. And there's this camaraderie that's developed. And then those people, they develop personal relationships with their colleagues. Even though they're working with different clients, they live in the same area. They decide, okay, we're going to go together for the weekend to the beach, or we're going to go out to get dinner. And if you don't incentivize your team members to do that, then they're going to feel that rift between them and like the company culture.
There's something I was reading about millennials and then Gen Z and different things they value. And, they're saying, Gen Z values even more than compensation, having that culture and that connection and feeling purpose in their work. And it's important to, I guess, make sure you're weaving that in to the role. And that's why we're volunteering.
Yeah.
That's why we did the beach cleanup. Without beautiful beaches, we're not going to have tourism. So I think it's important as leading a business and leading a team to tie those things in. So that's awesome that you do that too.
Yeah. Your business has grown tremendously over the last few years. How have you viewed the value of your time? As your business has grown, the value of your time has grown. And what I'd like to know is, how has your idea of delegation changed in the last few years?
Oh, gosh, when I first started the business, I had no life. I was embarrassed because I'd go out to dinner with other couples and friends, and there wouldn't be a dinner party that I wouldn't have to step out with an emergency on the phone because someone can't turn on a pool heater, or I don't know. And somehow it escalated to me. I received some advice from someone. It was my father, actually, that really stuck with me and got me to realize I have to really build a strong team around me. And he said, write down everything you do in a day, everything you do for the business, and then go through that list and figure out how you can build a team that can do 90% of that. So all that's left is supervising them and focusing on growth for the business. And I did that. Yeah, it was crazy. I sat down and I started writing down everything I do for the business. And I was like, oh my gosh, I'm responding to Google reviews. Oh my gosh, I'm uploading owner contact information into MailChimp once a month because I have a calendar reminder that reminds me to do that. And I was like, why am I doing this? So I started writing all this down and I said, okay, now I wrote it down. I can't just hand this over to someone and delegate it. I have to put together an SOP or a process or a system or instructions. So back to the foundational efforts you want to put in place when you start your business is something I didn't do, but I'm doing now. Document everything. How do you do things? Make a Loom video, record your own Zooms with just yourself on it and save it. How do I import contacts into MailChimp to send out a newsletter? Anything like that. I started documenting, we started recording, I required my team to do it. And then when we'd have new hires, they'd watch it. But it was also a great way to then be able to delegate these things because you have to show the how. And I had nothing documented. It took a lot of time, but once I had all of that done, now you kind of play and repeat.
I've always said this to team members onboarding. When we bring in new team members into Delegate, I'm always the last person to have like a touch base with them to really talk about our values as a company. And one of them is having I call the owner mindset. This applies to any sort of business owner. My goal is for each virtual assistant to think, breathe, and act like the owner. And it's a two-way street, right? So for the virtual assistant, they need to be able to take all the lessons, all the principles and skills that the owner of the company has and apply it in their day-to-day activities. But at the same time, as a business owner, you need to be able to set the groundwork for them so they can actually learn from you. You can't just hire someone and then expect them to know everything about the business like you do. It's not going to happen. So you need to set those SOPs, standard operating procedures, so that they have the ability to take on those tasks and responsibilities as well as you do.
Totally. I mean, I think if your team is failing, it's probably because of your leadership or because of how you've set them up. That's what I tell my managers. If, for example, if our inspectors or our handyman aren't doing the job correctly, I sit with the field manager and I'm like, okay, are you making sure they have the right supplies with them? When was the last time they did a training? Are you scheduling them properly or giving them enough time at each property? Are they overbooked? And there's usually, when you start asking those questions, you start finding kinks in the process, and it's not always just their fault. So you want to start with the managers stakeholders and setting the right roadmap. And I think that's important. Documenting things for sure. So you can then teach people how to do things pretty easily. And then I think it's also important to give them a voice and say, hey, I always say this when I hire new people. I say, this is how we do it. We're not married to this process. If you have a better idea or somewhere you've worked before that does it better, we're open to your feedback.
Yeah.
And usually when someone starts their first week, they're not tainted yet by the company Kool-Aid. So they make, oh my gosh, I've had tremendous improvements because of this. In property management, we have property information sheets. And it's essentially like an Excel, like wiki for every property. I had this one GSS rep start and he's like, oh, well, I have this awesome template that we use that actually lets you scroll and there's less room for error. And I was like, oh my gosh, this is amazing. It's a great improvement that they brought with them, but you have to open it up to say, hey, we're open to this. And now they're adding value to the business with a new way of thinking. If you just say, hey, this is how we do things, watch this video, follow our process, you're never going to really grow. None of us are as great as all of us, right? You're hiring people that are going to do things better than you. They're going to free up your time and they bring value in all kinds of ways. You just have to ask and open the door for that.
Going back to the whole retention thing, if you are giving them opportunities to contribute to the business in terms of processes, then they're much more willing to stay because they see that they're building it together with you. And I think that's where, a lot of people in corporate America, they have discontent with their jobs because they're not adding anything to it. They're just a little part of a mechanism and there's nothing that they're contributing except following, standard operating procedures.
The value of just saying thank you, of just expressing, giving someone recognition. I remember when I worked in corporate, I would have a box of kudos bars and I would drop it on people's desk when they came through for me or something. It was just like a joke in the office, simple kudos, little things like that. But with the team overseas, I think it's important. Like you said, they could feel disconnected, make sure that you're giving them recognition. For us, birthdays are a big deal. We need to know everybody's birthday. I make sure, and the whole company knows, and we usually send out a funny email about some kind of fake emergency, like house is flooded or big party, and then everybody opens it alarmed and it's happy birthday to this person. And we always send them something. No matter where they are in the world, we make sure we send them something, whether it's a cake or some kind of gift. But those are all little things that kind of make up the threads of who you are as a business. And those things are more and more important to people. It's not like, I'm a millennial. I remember when I got out of college, it was just, okay, how do I make it into the 6-figure club? How do I, it's just about comp, but it's not like that anymore. Yeah. So I'm sure, you're dealing with a lot of different personalities and you want to keep everybody happy. You want to match them with the right clients.
Yeah. There are people that, they come join your company because, they might be fathers and mothers and they just need a job to really support their families. I've seen that with the older generation of folks where they're super competent. They're very much experienced, but at the company, because it's very much transactional, they want a steady job where they can come to work and do their job. And then the younger generation, I've noticed, to your point, they're very much about the culture, about making it fun and building connections with people, which I appreciate. And because of that, tried to put more effort into kind of building a company culture where even though everybody is remote, even though they don't see each other in person, they feel connected. I want to transition to Host and Keep to talk a little bit about how you've been able to market, acquire clients. I remember having a conversation with you where you mentioned that a lot of your business has been built on referrals and Google. And there's probably a lot of property managers watching this and, they're very much in the operations side of the business and they're not thinking about expansion, even though it's an important aspect of the business. How have you managed to scale Host and Keep to the size it is today with Google, with referrals? Give us your playbook without giving all your trade secrets.
No, for sure. It's so easy, especially in this line of business, to just get lost in the ops when you don't have, a right team to delegate to or to make sure certain things that are kind of below where you should be operating at as a CEO or as a leader of the business. So this goes back to one of those foundational things. SEO isn't something that happens overnight. It's something you have to start from the beginning. So I remember when we started our website right away, I said, okay, we need to start blogging. So we started blogging and it was just me. I started blogging. I started looking at what are those keywords that are really important. I went on Google. I did keyword research, Airbnb combination, what buildings allow Airbnb in Miami or what have you. and I started putting out blogs. I started making sure that my guests left me good reviews, not just on Airbnb, but also on Google. We have over 300 reviews right now, 3.9 average rating on Google. So we get a lot of clients from Google organically, which is nice because I don't have to spend a ton of money on media buys. We do a little bit of advertising, but a lot of it is honestly organic from Google, which is great. In terms of referrals, we have 2 referral programs. And for anybody listening, this is super easy to set up. We have a referral program for just anybody that refers a client to us. They just have to fill out a form online. They put the person's information, they do an introduction. And if that client signs on, they get a bonus and we get a client.
Yeah.
And then we have a very targeted referral program for realtors. So we go after real estate agents and we give them a referral if they bring us someone that needs either long-term property management or short-term. You know, realtors have access to all these property owners, whether it's they're buying or they're selling or what have you. They have their foot in the door. So we find it really valuable to go after them. So we have a few relationships with them. Also, realtors are always really busy. They don't want to be bothered with short-term rental management or sometimes even long-term rental management. So they've been a good source of leads. We've dabbled in, social media ads. We haven't done any Google ads. We do some email marketing. We bought some lists and done some blasts. But I would say it's honestly organic. We're boutique. We're family owned. We probably have a team of like 13 people. So we try not to onboard. A busy week, we're onboarding 2 properties in that week because we're very involved with it. Every single sales call that happens, I'm on. I take the first touch point sales call and I work to close that client. So every single client gets time with me. I don't go walk through every property. I have my field manager do that. I try to, but I don't always make it. We have properties we manage that I've never seen here in Miami. But I do have my team there. I make sure they're inspected every 2 weeks. I make sure it's onboarded properly and everything looks good. I think that, once that lead comes in, I want it. I want to talk to that client. So that is something that by building a team around me to handle all those other things, I can focus on what my strengths are. And I know that my strengths are sales and marketing. So that's where I want to put 80% of my time rather than all the other noise that can happen in operations.
Now, going to being able to eventually sell the company, the next course of action is as you grow, you have to have a foundation in place to actually sell and market your services without you being there. Otherwise, you're that missing link.
Well, that's the problem. How are you going to sell your business if you do everything?
Yeah.
If you're literally doing everything, and it's so easy to fall into that trap, then when someone buys your business, what are they really buying? So you want to make sure you set up this kind of well-oiled machine that can operate without you. You could walk away. If I walked away today from Host and Keep, we'd probably not close any new clients and the marketing would just kind of be a little stagnant. But operationally, we'd run. Yeah. I've gotten to the point where when I get involved, I try to get involved sometimes in things, or I'll go on Slack and I'll chime in on stuff and I see activity and the team goes, Caroline, we're handling it. And I'm like, okay. Step away. Or I'll jump into the inbox. Yeah. They're like, Caroline, it's a nice way of saying, please.
We're on it. Yeah.
I'll jump in on the inbox sometimes just for fun because I want to and oh my gosh, I've messed up so bad. We had this triplex and there was this bachelorette party coming in and they rented one of the units, but somehow I gave them the code to the other unit. So they go into the other unit and they decorate it for this bachelorette party. And then the British people that booked that property show up and they walk in and there was a bachelorette party going on. And I was like, I really need to stay out of the inbox. It was close. I mean, it was just unit A or B. I mean, I messed up. So the team yells at me sometimes. But listen, I wasn't there 2 years ago. I was doing all of this work. So now I've gotten it where I have people that are doing it better than me. And that's great. I can focus on sales and marketing.
100%. I mean, I see it on just the tech side of things. My level of understanding of all these new property management softwares that have come out, different features within them, I can't touch that. I'm not going to touch it. I'm going to leave it to the people that know what they're doing, because otherwise I'm definitely not adding value. And to go back to your point, it's what is your core competency? And everything else that is not your core competency should be delegated. So for me today, it's about brand building on the marketing side and putting my face and the company's brand out there and talking and networking to as many people, because that's going to push the company forward. With that said, there has to come a point where even on the brand side, I can't delegate strictly associated with Blendi Muriqi. Otherwise, it's not sellable. That's actually the hardest part, I think, as a business expands and evolves. It's getting to that last point where if you leave, can the business continue to grow on its own?
And that's a really cool thought. Think about it. You're building something greater than yourself. It was your baby when you started, you did everything. And now you can actually step away and it won't implode. Or it'll implode a little bit. Like sometimes you have to be okay with like, okay, we're going to operate at 85%. And I have to be okay with that. But it's actually a very cool feeling to know like I could book a 2-week trip to Asia and like the business isn't going to implode. It's going to keep running.
For me, there was a realization on the sales side. I was taking all the sales calls, and at one point I was doing all the cold calling, the reach outs, and I came to the realization that it's because I am just strictly focusing on the sales calls, there's going to be a limit to the growth. And looking at how other companies, especially tech startups, how they grow very rapidly, it's a great case study in how we should continue to grow our businesses, where we have to compartmentalize all the different departments within our company and figure out how can we put the best people in each position. And that includes the thing that you're competent in, because then you can be a supervisor. And if it's sales and marketing, you're just there to supervise and make sure that the product or service you're selling aligns with the company goals.
That's the goal. I think right now I'm at that stage where I'm just leading the ship with sales and marketing, but I'm in it. I'm very much in it. But at least I'm not in all of the operations, which is
that's the 24/7
progress
part of the business. That's the reason that I started hiring overseas virtual assistants, because example you gave, I would be at dinner with my friends or family and I'd have to take phone calls about, issues that could be resolved by guest experience agent. And once I made that transition, it all made sense to me. I'm like, okay, now I need to find all the different aspects of my business that I can delegate and hire the best people in that position.
And that's how you become successful. I mean, we all have 24 hours in the day. How do you have these people running multiple companies and making millions of dollars when they have the same amount of hours as you? It's because they're able to set up people for success around them. They get the vision, they're empowered, they can make decisions, and they can be successful. We have something in our company where we have like this allowance every month for just doing something nice for a guest or an owner or what have you. So they can just make the call and they can say, I want to send a bottle of wine. There's an anniversary. So we're empowering them with something, it's something that they can do and they can make that decision and then they announce it and it's like celebrated internally that they chose to do something someone. But it's setting them up for success with things like that and tactics like that.
Well, the last question before we kind of wrap things up, you have a strong background in real estate and there may be people watching this that they're trying to get into real estate, whether it's long-term or short-term. What advice would you give to someone that is trying to get into the real estate market in 2024?
So interest rates are different. Any assets I own, I probably have at like a 3.5-4% interest rate. Thank goodness. You can buy down your interest rates, which is something I didn't know and I did do on one transaction. I truly believe real estate is the way to build wealth. Yes, you can build companies and sell them and you can build wealth that way too. But if I were to do that, I would take those funds and I would invest it in real estate. And the goal is passive income. I see my family now. I'm like, my dad's like retired and like living off rents and traveling the world. And I'm like, oh, that's the dream. That's what I want to achieve. But it all starts with playing Monopoly. It's collecting these doors. So it's like, okay, let's start with your first one. Figure out, what kind of down payment you need. Make sure, shop around for your loans, get your property, you get it set up. Maybe there's a value add component. Maybe you want to convert a garage into a bedroom. There's so many ways to make money with real estate, honestly. The fact that, I don't know if you know this, did you know that land never devalues?
It's a finite resource, so you can't make more of land.
Correct. So you can buy land and it will literally never devalue. It will only increase in value. I remember I've done land assemblages where I'm like knocking on people's doors, trying to get pieces of land together to then take that and sell that to somebody that will buy the whole piece. Or I bought land where I've then like subdivided it to build, instead of one house, 2 houses. I didn't build anything. I sold it to someone that would, but now I had 2 folios instead of 1. And all that took was buying a lot, going to the city, meeting with zoning and knowing that, you would be able to subdivide. There's so many creative ways that you can make money with real estate, but a lot of people go the route of just buying a property and then long-term renting it. I mean, short-term renting is great. It's way more aggressive, hands-on, but you can 3x usually your returns
on a short-term rental
versus long-term.
Yeah. The only caveat there is just be ready. It's not as passive as most people think it is. There's a lot of gurus out there that talk about passive income. If you want passive income, short-term rentals are not one of those.
Definitely not. I always tell my clients, I'm like, okay, so I don't have any client that would value their time at less than like $65 an hour. To manage a short-term rental, you're looking at 10 to 15 hours a week. So do the math there. Where do you want your time going? And that's usually where, Host and Keep comes in, and we come in as your property manager, and it makes sense.
That's a really good value proposition. We do something similar where we ask business owners in the short-term rental space, other industries, we ask them like, how much is an hour of your time worth? And then we ask them like, what are the tasks and responsibilities you're currently taking on? And then it's just like, it's logic. If the task that you're doing repeatedly over the course of the week is a $13 an hour task, and you value your time at 300 or 400, then it's a no-brainer. You hire someone that'll do that for you.
Right. And it's about releasing that control. Some people don't want to release that control. I know my partner, Vincent, he oversees all of the accounting and the reporting, and he has a very hard time releasing control of certain things. But I pushed him to. I'm like, you can't be doing this stuff. You need to have somebody else do it. And sure, he does all of the wire transfers and pays the owners. But today, actually, he brought up, he's like, hey, I think I'm going to train, someone on our team to do the owner statements. And I'm like, wow, that's a big deal. Yeah. He still wouldn't release that piece. And when owner's statement time comes, it's usually around, we pay all of our owners by the 10th of the month. So around like the 7th, I lose him for 3 days. He literally just like 3 days, he's like a mad scientist in his office. And I have to literally have his phone because he's banging out these owner statements, but he will not release that control. I think I'm finally getting him to cross over. So if someone is looking to do that, my advice would be, there's certain things that you may not want to release control of. It may have to do with financials and proprietary information, but most of the stuff you probably can.
Yeah. I mean, owner state that's high impact work. So it makes sense that he wants to keep that. But as the company grows, that dynamic too will change.
See, for me, I'm surprised with sales. To me, that's new money. That is one of the most important things we do. And I have a hard time actually being comfortable letting go of that. But I get what you're saying. How are you going to really grow much faster if you're not letting go of that?
Yeah. If you're trying, there's this expression, if you put a gun to my head and you said you have to grow your business 10x within the next year. The constraint that you have is often sales. So in my head, I'm like, well, there's only one of me. If I had to grow the company 10x, I would need more salespeople. And so then your mindset shifts toward, okay, how do I bring on like-minded people that have the same traits that I have and share the same values? And how do I onboard them and train them in a short period of time and have them do the selling for me? And that's very difficult to do because you're the face of the company, but eventually that's inevitable if you're trying to achieve massive growth.
Very cool. That's something I need to look at for sure. Yeah.
Cool. Well, Caroline, I really appreciate you joining this episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. For our listeners, tell us, where can we find you online, social media, your website?
So we're www.hostandkeep.com. That's the property management company. And then we have a cleaning company as well called Clean and Collected. So we're based here in downtown Miami. And that would be the best way to find us. We're also on Instagram, TikTok, and all of that fun stuff.
Awesome. Thank you so much for joining this episode of the Sip and Scale podcast. Until next time. Thanks, guys.